Okay, I hope you can hear me. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Bible study here at the Riverside congregation. We appreciate your attendance very much, and for those who are listening online, we encourage you to tune in again next Sunday. Of course, on Wednesday nights, we study together. For those who have not received the news already, our dear brother, Eddie Crowder, passed away, and it's very sad. He was here last Sunday, and all of us had hopes that he would recover and beat this thing. There's a lot I don't know about the situation, but a lot of us received text messages this morning, and so we're very saddened about that. I think Mornay has already met with the family. Mornay is away doing a gospel meeting at the New Hope Road congregation, so he will be away through Wednesday anyway. But we're glad you're here. It's a very solemn day for all of us. We lost another fighter, another soldier in the Lord's army. But you know, the Bible talks about blessed are the dead that die in the Lord. They rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. So we'll be talking about some of that this morning in the worship hour, if I can get through it. I'm a little bit emotional right now. But I do want to welcome all of those who are listening online, and very good to see Sydney again, Zach's sister. Thank you for being here. Today, it's been just about a month since I first arrived in India, and we'll turn these lights out in just a moment. And I really, out of all the trips I've made, it's been about 7 or 8, I ranked this one close to the top because of the reasons that I went. And I'll talk about those in just a moment. But I wanted to give you folks an update on what's happening in India, at least the southern part of India. I have some good friends there. A lot of good things have happened since COVID-19 took the country, took the world. The pandemic was really a bad thing. But it produced some good things, some good fighters. We lost some soldiers too on that side of the water. But we are happy to be back, and I'm happy to give you a report. If you've got questions about some of the slides I'm going to give you, there's about 30 slides. I'll talk through most of them. Feel free to ask those questions. Dennis, would you take all of the lights down, please? Yeah, take them all out if you will. So it was, after a lot of planning, it was time to go back to India, and I'm glad that I did. I felt like it was safe to go. Huge country. Anybody else in here been to India? Anyone? I do recommend it. So let's talk about some of the first things here. The planning and the preparation, and maybe some of this is not new to you, but there had to be a lot of planning, preparation involved in this process. Of course, you've got to have a visa, you've got to have a passport, and because post-COVID season, they're still checking to make sure you got vaccines. I almost got deterred at the Atlanta airport because there was one form that I had not filled out, so I had to get that form settled before they would let me proceed to New Delhi. And of course, you got to arrange lodging and transportation. So that's a lot of planning. And Surya and Joshua and I had talked about what's the best time for me to come. And I wanted to come at the appropriate time so that they could take their daughter out of school. And then we find out she's expecting, and so we wonder how's that going to affect my coming. But anyway, we had a wonderful time together. The flight from Atlanta to Amsterdam to New Delhi, Bengaluru, and then Coimbatore, the flight time was 25 hours going, 35 hours returning, and my schedule kept changing all the time on the coming back part. That's why the hours are 35 coming back. I was sent to an airport north only to fly back to the same place, then fly up to Paris, France. And your choices were either you can reject this flight and get your refund or accept it. Well, it was too late for me to change, so I accepted it. But that was something that I had not planned on. And then, of course, we find out that we've had some deaths since our last visit there. My last trip to India was January of 2020. And that's when the COVID thing had become full-blown. And quite a few people who were out of the country were not allowed to come back in for a little while. And quite a few people who were in the country were not allowed to fly out. Because the whole world was trying to figure this thing out. What is going on? We don't know what to do. And, we reached a point where we were just waving at one another. We weren't shaking hands. We weren't staying in close contact. We seem to have gotten past that. We feel a little bit more comfortable. So I felt like at this time, it was okay to go back. So we've had some deaths on that side of the water. Brother Ramraj, he's a gospel preacher. He passed away. Another Christian by the name of Balu, a gentleman who drove us around quite a bit, he passed away. So their widows are still in mourning, even though it's been some time. They're very sad. And I got to meet Brother Ramraj's widow. We'll talk about her in just a moment. So keep these families in your prayers, if you will. But there are some great things that are happening in South India. Their widows and orphans, they're being taken care of. And Bible studies and conversions are continuing. And the gospel is still being spread throughout South India. It's one of the good places to go. And it's one of the places you can go where you'll get more returns on your dollar than a lot of places. The food is cheap. The food is good. It's hot and spicy, but it's very good. Rooms are very cheap if you want to stay in hotels. I think my air-conditioned hotel room was about $15 a day. And that was with air conditioning. And so you could live very well if you were a person who had maybe $25,000 a year. You could live very comfortably in India without any strain at all. You would do very well in India. But there are some other things you'd want to consider also. And the attendance and membership has increased tremendously. The congregation where I spent the most time in Bellicor, the membership is over 200. And quite a few of those are children. And so they are growing and increasing, and they are in the process of buying property. I should say they purchased a property. They are sort of like us, looking for a place to worship. The land was purchased while I was there. All the papers have been signed, and I'll show you the property in just a moment. And I'm happy to let all of you know that what you're doing, you've been supporting two preachers in India, Brother Surya. I'll tell you about him in just a moment. Excuse me. And the property where they will be worshiping is not far from where he lives and not far from where they currently worship right now. But the reasons we go, of course, is to strengthen the disciples. We went there to teach the word, went to encourage the brethren, and also to be encouraged by the brethren. So let's move on. So a few facts about India. You've seen these in previous slides on my previous trips. 28 states in India, they received their independence from Great Britain in 1947. Several of the languages there, you'll recognize them. I'm not going to go through them. But the primary language is Hindu, about 80%. Of course, English is being taught. As a matter of fact, in the school where Little Blessia attends, she's being taught in English. I'll tell you a little interesting story. I think they're listening online since they're 9.5 hours ahead of us. It's interesting how they came together. That met at a school of preaching, Jim Waldron School of Preaching. And he's from, of course, Tamil Nadu, and she's from West Bengal, which is up in the northeast corner of India. And they have a little different language. And at the time of their meeting, she spoke this language, so they had to communicate in English. Well, they're doing better now. She can speak Tamil very well. But he had to convince her that if she's going to be up here in this cool, very nice state, you need to come down here and decide that if we're going to marry, you can live here. And I have his permission to talk about that. So he asked her to come down and see if you're going to survive in this very hot and humid climate of Tamil Nadu. And of course she did. And they were married. And so that was a very funny story. But I love hearing that story each time. Now, you talk about the growth of India. The country is growing. It is going to happen in 2023. It may happen in 2022 that the population of India will surpass the population of China. India is at 1.417 billion people. China is at 1.426 billion people. It will happen in 2023. The people have predicted already. I don't know if you've thought about how much a billion is. Since so many, we use that number now, it doesn't mean much to us since we don't have a billion of anything. Some of the bigger people have $90 billion, $100 billion. That number is just so outrageous we can't comprehend. But let me give you some idea of how many a billion really is. If you were to catch 10,000 fish per day, 365 days a year, how long would it take you before you have caught a billion fish? How long would it take you, and you can do the math, what do you think, 3 years? Anyone else want to weigh in? It would take you 27 years to catch 1 billion fish at 10,000 fish per day. A billion is a large number. And that means we got to work that much more because that burden is placed on each generation to be able to teach the gospel. Now, let's go to the next one here. And so this is a map of some of the languages of India. Of course, the place I worked was here in Tamil Nadu, so the language is Tamil. You go up here in places like, they speak Punjabi up here, Telugu is spoken, and of course, Gujarati is spoken here. There are different languages for each state, and it's very difficult to find someone who speaks all of the languages. But again, English being the primary language of commerce and trade and entertainment now, the push is for English. And I'm really happy to say that Joshua and Surya and their daughter, Blessia, is doing very well with this. They are excellent. Let's move on to the next one. Much of the work in India, at least in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, was started by Carl and Emma Johnson. Now, I was with Carl and Emma Johnson in 1988 and 1993. Carl Johnson passed on, but he was very successful. He, along with Ken and Barbara McAfee, in establishing and strengthening congregations throughout South India. Brother Ken McAfee, he was a member at the Duluth congregation many, many years, moved away in October of 1992. He was going once a year since the mid-70s. And finally they moved away, and he's still been going, and only this last trip, which I went by myself, was he not able to go. And so a lot of folks now are turning those works over. Brother Jim Waldron, who's been doing an excellent work in India, he has turned his work over to Scott Richards and the Terry congregation because he's not able to go because of health reasons. So you see, you're needing good people to keep these works going because they've been thriving for many, many years. So please be in prayer for all of these good people. And of course, these are some of our areas of work. This is South India. This time I was in Velakkor, Palachis, is where I've always gone in the past, Udamalpat, Erode, Madurai, Valparai, and Mount Zion. These are places that I always make an point to visit. Let's move on here. So on my arrival at the airport in Coimbatore, I was met by a huge group of people. This is Joshua. I consider her my daughter now, our daughter. She's family. She's got an interesting story. She lost both of her parents at an early age, and she has an older sister, about 5 years older than she is. Her name is Jasmita. She still lives up in West Bengal State in the city of Darjeeling. And they're very close, but they did lose their parents at an early age. And she really lamented the fact that she didn't have her family. So we've been going back and forth for the last 3 years. And I said, you're a Reid now. You're part of the Reid family. Her last name is Kati, Joshua Kati. So we have had a good relationship. And this is her husband, Surya. He's a gospel preacher. He's very tech savvy. He reminds me of Zach and Laura. This couple reminds me of Zach and Laura so much. When I think about one, I think about the other. And I have the same level of admiration and respect for Zach and Laura as I do these two people here. But this is Mike. Mike is a well-grounded gospel preacher, has been since I met him in 1988. This is his wife, Geeta. This is Surya's mother. Her name is Rajeshwarya. And this preacher, his name is Prabhakaran, and this is his wife, Rosie. So they were there meeting me at the airport, and it was good to see them after about close to 3 years. First thing I wanted to do was get some sightseeing out of the way, because in the past, it's always been that, okay, we're going to work. This time, this was more of a social visit. I wanted to get back and see the people who are very dear and special to me. And we are visiting in a city called Uti. Uti is a very short name, Udagamandalam. It's a tourist city. It's in the high places. It's very cool, a lot of rainy weather, but it is a wonderful city, and you can find anything you want. There are nice hotels and things like that, places for recreation. So we stayed there. Now, this is Surya's father. His name is Anbu. Anbu is the Tamil word for love. So when you read 1 Corinthians 13 in our Bible, and it says, love this, love this, love this, you will see his name, A-N-B-U, Anbu Chelian. And of course, Surya is, and of course, this is Blessy. Her name is Blessia, but we shortened it to Blessy. So I was very happy to see them. Now, this is a congregation in Vellacoil. You will notice that they are meeting in a very nice, well-furnished, decorated wedding hall. The owners of this place rent this out to them first day of the week. But they don't want to be in this position of having to rent this place, much like we are trying to get out from under, for the rest of their lives. So there was a push on to buy property. And I'm really happy to say, with the support of this congregation and many private anonymous donations, they were able to purchase the property, and I was able to stand on it, and I'll show you some pictures of that. So I salute them for their leadership and the looking forward, if you will, trying to make things work out for the future. So on this Saturday, the Saturday I arrived, there was a lectureship meeting being conducted here. And there was around 140 people in the attendance. Like I said, their membership is around 200. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is Brother Mike. Mike is being supported by the Morningside Drive congregation in Texas, and he did attend or come to the Duluth congregation on 2 occasions, he and his wife, Geeta. And so the first place I took them when they spent the night with us, you can guess, I took him to Stone Mountain. Where is she going to take folks from India? So we went to Stone Mountain, and we went to the sites down in Atlanta, the World of Coke, I think we went to, and the aquarium. We did go to the aquarium in Atlanta. Mike is a very fine man. Mike is here preaching, but what you don't see is the amount of pain that Brother Mike is in. He needs back surgery in a bad way. And he had postponed his surgery while I was there so that he can have this surgery later. So it's something that's been nagging him for quite some time. And I think he's in the process of getting that back surgery done right away. He's a very excellent man, a very sound man in the faith, and I'm always happy to work with him. And so here I am preaching on that lectureship, and Mike, of course, is translating for me. And the sermon I preached that day was 623. Now, if you'll remind me later, I'll tell you why I chose those numbers. What does those numbers mean? 623. I'll tell you later, but you got to remind me. I may forget it. So here's a little bit of what the schedule is like for Syria. He gets up early on Sunday mornings, and on this occasion, I was with him, of course. We started 5 a.m. in the morning, and we reached to the city of Utica. We drove there, and worship was over by 7:30. Then we moved to Velicor and preached there. And again, a different title of a lesson I preached there was "To God Be the Glory." So the second place, and these should be 1, 2, 3, not 1, 1, 1. Secondly, I preached at Velicor, where you just saw the previous slide, and we preached there at 8 a.m. And of course, I told you the sermon was titled 623. And thirdly, I went to a place called Andranagar, and I can't see the bottom of that. And we preached there at a congregation. So this is his schedule. For a man who's only 32 years old, and if you're listening, sir, and I got you 1 year off, I'm sorry. He's either 31 or 32, but I think he's 32. For a man who's 32 years old, he's quite busy for a young man. And I've been so impressed with he and his wife and their desire to spread the gospel. I'm so impressed with him, and I'm happy that this congregation has a part in supporting his work. So we're very thankful to all of you, especially to the men, for considering that. And so this is his work. Plus, he preaches online quite a bit as well. He's very active. Now, this is the congregation at Utica. And I mentioned that during the COVID thing, we lost one of the preachers. His name was Brother Ramjan. And this is his widow. This was his wife right here. And so I to talk with her, and we gave her some benevolence money to help her out. But these are the kind of situations they face. There's really not a good backup plan for them. These preachers work very hard, keeping small congregations together. And you can see where we're meeting. It's just a very small tin building, way outside of town. But they are not able to afford what we would call a located preacher like we do here in the States. So what Brother Syria does, he goes from congregation to congregation to congregation to those places that cannot afford a located preacher. And so this is a wonderful congregation, and it was great to be with them. And of course, the second place, as I showed you, was the church at Velicor, where they have the most members. And then the third place we go was a place called Andranagar. This was, again, another very small congregation. And what Syria does, he gets up on Sunday, and by 1:30, he's finished. He's gone to 3 congregations every Sunday. Sometimes his wife and daughter goes with him, but I think usually he goes by himself. How am I doing on time? Okay, good. By the way, Syria prepared these dramatic effects, so I didn't know how to take some of them out, but he prepared this PowerPoint. I really just went in there and put in a couple of extra photos, but I appreciate him doing that. And so here he is translating for me on Sunday, and this, I have to say this suit that I'm wearing, I had no idea I was going to be surprised with clothes when I got there. His father and mother carried me to a tailor. I don't know if they looked at me and said, "That's not going to work down here. You're going to have to look better than jeans." So they carried me to a tailor, picked out the cloth, and put all this together. And the next thing I know, in about 2 or 3 days, I'm preaching in a brand new suit, and felt good too. But this is what I was wearing. And actually, this shirt and these pants I'm wearing were also purchased by them. So I must have looked pretty bad, you know, to give a guy from America 2 new suits to preach in. But they insisted, "You preach in these, we're going to make you look a little bit better than perhaps you thought you were going to do. No t-shirt preaching up here. You're going to look better." But I'm thankful to him. He's an excellent translator. I don't know what skills go into knowing, but you have to be careful just to speak in plain, short sentences, and be careful about using idioms and things that are not familiar. Now, he can pick up on them because he's very familiar, but I try not to do that. Keep your lessons very simple, and you will be better off. And here's Brother Syria. He's baptizing. And by the way, if you have not looked through his monthly reports that he sends, please look through. You'll see how busy they are. They're going out doing a lot of benevolence work, and I think this is how they are growing and getting Bible studies out of that. And as a result, their congregation is growing tremendously, which is why they need a new property to work. So I'm grateful to him. He's always making converts and teaching. And this is the other brother that this congregation, his name is Izian Chizian, and he is from a congregation called Valparaiso. Now, he has suffered some health issues over the past few years, but he has improved quite a bit, and he also is an excellent translator. He understands English very, very well. Very, very crisp, very good pronunciation, and I'm so thankful to him. And he was one of the people who came to meet me also when we were in the city of Palachi. All right. You heard me speak about the marriage hall where they worship on Sundays. Well, this man on my right and on my left, these two brethren who are members of the congregation, they own this marriage hall. They rent it out to different functions, primarily marriages, but banquets and things like that. But isn't it fortunate that they are also members of this congregation? And yes, they probably are getting a very good discount, but it's nothing like having your own place, having your money go to your own building. So as long as they are here, they have a place to worship. But at some point, they're going to build a new place on the property they have purchased. So I'm very thankful for these two men. I spent a lot of time with them. Very good business type people, but very faithful to the Lord as well. Now, I was able to visit the property where the Velicor congregation is going to build their building. And when I first looked at it, it was all grown up with weeds. Now, this is a property. It's been paid for. All of that has been settled. Now the clearing is going to begin. And these pictures came in just last week, I noticed, because as I was leaving, this tractor was not there, and Brother Syria sent me these photos, and this is most of it being cleared off. So they're going to be able to put up a very nice church building by their standards, and of course now they've got to work on raising money for the property. Something else that's very encouraging, it is always good when you go back to a place year after year after year after year, and you see people who are still faithful to the Lord. This brother on my left, his name is Jagadish. He's a gospel preacher, but he has recently, no, I would say over the last 3 years, he had to undergo a kidney transplant. Guess where the donor kidney came from? Came from his wife. Fortunately, she was able to have the right type, I guess blood and everything, to donate him a kidney. Now, of course, he'll be taking anti-rejection drugs the rest of his life, and he was taking them while I was there, but how fortunate that was. There was no waiting list to get on. He had a kidney transplant, and he was there waiting for us, and we had dinner together to talk about that. And this brother on the right here, C.K. Panyasamy, we've been friends 35 years. Still faithful, still preaching the gospel, and not getting rich at this, brethren. Some of them are barely getting by. That's why I'm always getting requests, can you help us, can you help us? But I'm so thankful that they are still standing for the truth in these congregations, especially these good men. Now, this was one of the photos I had. There's a congregation up in the city called Kotagiri. It's called Mount Zion. Brother Carl Johnson, who I showed you at the very front of this slide projection, he was responsible helping to start this congregation. And in 2020, this is Ken McAfee, Chris Perry from the Morrison Church, and we are walking down to a brother's house. His name is Moen, and I'll show you the congregation inside. Now here, this was last week. I just posted these in this slideshow. They're having a gospel meeting at the Mount Zion Church. Filled to capacity, standing room only, people outside, people in the doorway. They don't seem to have a problem getting people to come to worship. It's amazing to me how that, it seems to me, I may be wrong, but their zeal and their desire to hear God's word in what is primarily an idolatrous country, it doesn't affect them. They don't need a lot of motivation to come and worship. They are there. And so here's the Mount Zion congregation, and there was a huge gospel meeting there. And this is another view, same meeting place, same day, just from a different angle. And I preached several sermons in this congregation back in 1993. One of the things I remember, especially in 1993, was, excuse me, I remember when I first went there were only 2 cups. Two cups at the table. And one was being passed down the left side here, and one was being passed down the right side. Guess where I was sitting, brethren? I was sitting right back here. When it got to me, several people had drank before me. Well, what do? I didn't have these little convenient cups. Well, I drank from the cup. I ate the bread. I'm still here. It's not something I recommend. Things have changed a lot now, but there were 2 cups. Now, they were not doing this because they were 2 cuppers, as we know here in the States. They were doing it because that's all they had. Now, of course, COVID would have wiped that out. I probably would not. I'm sure I would not. But things have changed a lot over time. So I'm thankful for that. And notice the number of young people, the kids, and of course you notice primarily the women sit here. Many of them wear veils. It's not an issue. We're not there to talk about your veils. They don't hold that as a cause of fellowship or anything. The men usually sit on one side, the women sit on the other. The nicest people I've met, some of the nicest people I've met, are folks like this. And they're just curious about who you are, what is it like to live in America? And of course, I'm always happy to answer. Now, on the day of this gospel meeting, here are the many preachers who came from all across South India. And I told Surya when he sent me this photo, I said, you must be the youngest man in this group of preachers. He says, I am. And of course, he being 32, possibly 31, he is the youngest. This is Brother Moen. He's been there a long time. I'm not positive, but I think they might have elders here at this congregation. But all of these men have come, preachers from all over. Who knows what Romans 10 verse 15 says? Let me see if you can finish it. How beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace. These are the warriors, these are the soldiers holding the fort for the cause of Christ in South India. And we should be thankful that that door stays open for right now. You don't know what's going to happen in 10 years if India says, no, we don't want people coming in here doing conversions. So be careful. Do what we can while we are able. And this is a congregation at a lady's house. Her name is Usha. Church meets there, and on Sunday mornings, Mike goes to this congregation, then he goes to another. This is a congregation at a place called Udamapet. Same kind of situation. Church travels, and this is Prabhakaran, who's a preacher there. This is his wife, Rosie, and these are their 2 boys. One of them is named Ken. He was named Ken after Ken McAfee. And this is his younger brother. And this is a place where the church meets in a city called Palachi. This is where Mike lives. And this is where we've conducted so many schools. The bottom part of this establishment is living quarters for Mike, his wife. All of this up here is for teaching, training. And so, I don't know if you can't recognize him from the back, but this is Brother Ken McAfee going up to teach. We have a lot of tea breaks in India. There's about 5 different tea breaks we have at each meal, and then in between morning and afternoon sessions, we drink a lot of tea in India. Now, what I told you, part of the reason I went was to teach, but the other part was social visiting. And this couple here, this is Joshua Kati, this is Surya, her husband, and this is Blessia. Last time I was there, you see how small she was. And we have had conversations, and we've been on WhatsApp for the last 2.5 years. And it was a great treat to see her. As a matter of fact, when I arrived at the airport, she ran up to me, Grandpa Tom. And of course, I did carry a bunch of chocolates with me, and that maybe had something to do with her happiness. But she said, we desire those American chocolates because there's something in these Indian chocolates that may not be just right. So we know that they're coming from America, they're good. So I had maybe 15 pounds of chocolates in my suitcase. So I was there to spoil this child, and we were able to take her shopping and buy her things, bicycles. I just spent a lot of time with them, but they're a very wonderful family. And I was able to make some new friends. This young lady here, her name is Abhi Shruti, and these are her parents, her father and her mother. And she is she's very educated oriented. In other words, she's trying to get her degrees and move forward. And Sister Joshua is taking her under her wings and helping her. And they'll be great teachers in the congregations. One of the things they're trying to work on is teachers for the young people. Right now, they're not there. But Sister Joshua and Abhi are going to be able to take care of a lot of those needs. So I'm very thankful to Abhi and Joshua for that. Zach, you might appreciate this. We found the KFC in India. It's in a little town called Erode, where we were doing some shopping, and there was, big as life, KFC. I'll tell you, they don't have mashed potatoes, but they do have fries. But it was all very good, very spicy, very good, and we just made a meal of it. So I really enjoyed the time we had. And of course, we did some sightseeing in Uti. And these are some of the things you'll see. The cities are always filled with traffic, especially in the mornings when people are going to work. You will go into restaurants, and like every morning I'd go into a restaurant and we're eating from banana leaves. They're easy to clean up. You just throw it in the trash or feed it to the goats. And of course, India is known for its tea exportation. Some of the loveliest tea terraces you will ever see. Some of them are such inclines that you wonder, how are they even able to stand up to pick those leaves? That's how steep some of them are. But they're known for that. And of course, their sunsets are amazing. Now, I think I've come to about 5 minutes. So I would rank this trip of going to India as perhaps maybe my best because of the reasons involved. The fact that Surya and Joseph are expecting means I'm going to have to make another trip. And I'm looking forward to that. Now, she is due to give birth in March, so I need to make it after March. I missed the mango season, so because I went in September, so I got to make my trip between March and September so I can take advantage of the new baby and the mangoes. So I got to work those things out very carefully. A lot of good things are happening. This is a very sad day here at this congregation, but I hope this has brought you a little bit of cheer. The gospel is still going to be spread. God's word is not going to return void. Somebody's going to have to pick up the slack. We must do that. And that applies to them. That applies to us. And I wanted to thank you personally. I know prayers were offered up on my behalf for the work over there. I know you folks were praying on a weekly basis and in your private prayers. I am grateful for that. The downside of the trip is always sitting in those tiny little seats about this much space and you're having to sit straight up for 25, 30 hours of flying. And then, of course, layovers in airports doesn't help the fact, but once you land, it's different. You're among brethren, and you don't feel so lost. And it's really good to be among people like that, the most kind and courteous people I have ever met. I'm thankful for Joshua and Surya. Look forward to getting back there, hopefully next year, Lord willing. What questions do you have about the work that you are personally involved in? Many of these preachers are barely getting by. They don't receive 5, 10, 15 checks from different congregations. They are very limited, but they are not making excuses. They are doing the work in spite of what they are receiving. So $100 here is a lot to them, and they are extremely happy. And that's why they supply these reports to us to let you know they are busy. Any questions about the people, or I can't tell you much about the culture. I can tell you some things that I noticed. Sure, there are do's and don'ts, but I always ask, if you have a question, ask them before you pursue something. Yes, Dennis?
I know you've made multiple trips over the years, but for immigration and what you have to do, like applying for a visa, how long do the visas last? Do you have to renew it every so often? Or, and what type of visa do you get?
You can get, mine is a 1-year visa, the one I got. And it cost me, I think I paid $41. But you want to get those well in advance of travel. You can get 6-month visas. You can get 1-year visas. I guess the cost goes up with each. Passports, of course, can last 10 years. You need to check those occasionally. My son was going to fly to Italy. He found out his passport was expired, so he had to cancel his trip and start all over and get his money back. So yes, the visas vary. Yes, ma'am.
What's the conversion rate of dollars to their currency?
Very good question. When I went to India in 1988, we were getting 14 rupees to $1. Today, 80 rupees to $1. So it's lost a lot. It's taking more rupees to equal our dollar than it used to. And I don't know all of the reasons for that, but that perhaps is the case where any kind of money you can exchange. The dollar is pretty strong, in my opinion, right now. Around the world, it's just very strong. But it's taken a lot more rupees to equal our dollar than it used to.
What will a rupee buy?
1 rupee.
How much did it cost you in rupees to eat at KFC?
I didn't pay for it. But I'll give you an example. Breakfast every morning. This is primarily vegetarian restaurants we go to. And eating from the banana leaf, you maybe have spent $1 for breakfast. And they keep bringing until you stop. I told them I learned the secret of saying stop. It used to be, there was this dear sister in Palachi, we would go to her house, we would say, no more, no more. She'd bring more and more and more. No more, no more, bring more and more food. And I told Joshua, I visited an Indian lady here who's a friend of our daughter Hannah, and she says, the secret to saying stop is fold the banana leaf forward. In other words, that tells them no more. So I've been folding the banana leaf forward now, and that's the trick. If you don't, they keep bringing. But there's just so much. Wonderful people, wonderful place. Yes?
How difficult is the communication barrier, the language barrier, given the fact that, whenever you preach, you always have to have a translator?
I only know three words in Tamil. One of them is Kale Vanakkam, which means good morning. The other one is Male Vanakkam, which means good evening. And the other one is Stothram, which means thank you. 3 words. I should know more Tamil than I do. But fortunately, they are learning English faster than we are adapting other languages here. So, if you can't say something, you can use a point at it, and people will know. English will become more dominant as time passes. But it is, for me, if I didn't have Syria by my side, I would be in trouble. I'd have to find somebody. Now, understand, the airports, you got to know English. The pilots, you got to know English. You got to know English in those positions, because that's pretty much, English is the Koine Greek of the old world. English is the same today, same as that today. You got to know English, and good or bad, learn English to get ahead. Yes?
623.
623. Thank you. I started my lesson by saying, you don't get out of chapter 1 in the Bible before you're dealing with numbers. And I dealt with all sorts of numbers, different numbers, 40, 7 days. The 6 represented the 6 hours that Jesus hung on the cross in Mark chapter 14, verse 25 and 34. 6 hours. The 2 represents the 2 gates, the 2 ways, the 2 destinies of Matthew chapter 7. Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And many there be which go in thereat, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to life, and few there be that find it. 2 gates, 2 ways, 2 destinies. 3 represented the 3 crosses that stood on Calvary's hill. The one soldier, not soldier, but the one thief says, Lord, remember me. The other thief said, if you're the Son of God, get us down. And that other cross, the most important cross, the one of the 3 in the middle, represented redemption. So one cross represented rebellion, one cross represented repentance, the one cross in the middle, the most important cross, represented redemption. 623. So I'll preach that lesson here sometimes. Our time is up, I'm afraid. It's 10 till. Thank you for your, I'm sorry, one more question.
I
Yes.
was just wondering, with all the different languages they have, you said for the different states,
Yes.
are any of them similar enough that they can kind of talk with each other?
It is not. It is not. They may learn a few words, like Tamil and Telugu. I've been listening to things in Tamil and Telugu on YouTube, just trying to get used to their movies. It sounds similar to us in English, but it's not the same. It is so much different. And Hindi being the national language, of course, but it requires people to study, just like you learn any other language. You've got to study it. So it's not similar enough to go across the border and start to be understood. Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you so much. I appreciate your interest, and we'll get ready for worship now.